Hey everybody, happy Tuesday. Right off the top, apologies. Yeah, it's dark in here. I know it's dark. That's because it's night. And also, I don't have that many lights on. Oop, let me adjust this stand. Okay, all right, that's a little lower. Yeah, but sometimes dark is nice. I mean, it's chill. It's like we're hanging out together at a intimate locale, with accordion music and wine, but I don't drink wine, so whiskey and Belgian beer. And I am gonna make the Belgian beer video by request from my lovely fans, but I'm not quite ready to do that yet. But very soon. I try to post mostly positive videos. I try, but I don't know if this one will be like that so much. And the topic tonight is: did we, the United States, learn anything from 9/11? And I would say that we did not. And I don't know how much humanity learns from all of its wars. Because there have been wars all the time, everywhere, since humanity came into existence, however we came into existence, whether that's evolution or some other way. I mean, maybe some aliens engineered us out of the slime and dropped us here. I have no idea. 60,000 years ago. Evolution would seem to be the correct answer, but what do we really know, right? So, what did we learn? Did we learn anything from 9/11? Has been on my mind for like a week. I don't mean at all to disrespect all of the people who died in 9/11. That was terrible. It was a terrorist act. It was an attack on the country. Yet, does our reply justify? Is our reply justified? Was our reply justified? By which I mean the invasion of Afghanistan and the invasion of Iraq. I think you can make a pretty good argument. I don't know if you can hear Gabe. What's the matter, Gabe? What's the matter, buddy? Come here. It's almost time for his midnight snack, but not quite yet. He's just been a little clingy today, but in a cute way. Gabe is my cat, if you're watching for the first time. Okay, so 9/11 happens. George W. Bush, who in my opinion remains an unindicted war criminal, no matter how many paintings he does of his own feet in the bathtub, and no matter how many articles in the press make him seem like a cute little retired president, do on his horse riding into the sunset. As far as I'm concerned, he and Cheney are unindicted war criminals on the basis of the war in Iraq, not Afghanistan, Iraq, because they falsified the WMD evidence. It was obtained under torture by a third-party nation in the Middle East because that's the evidence they wanted to find, because they wanted to invade Iraq, and they wanted to invade Iraq because it was unfinished business from Bush Sr.'s administration. Bush Sr. fulfilled the mandate of I think it was the United Nations at the time in 91 in pushing Saddam out of, was it Kuwait that he invaded? Kuwait was an ally. Pardon me, I'm just reaching for my beverage. So we pushed Saddam out of that country, and we didn't remove him from power. But supposedly Saddam attempted to have Bush Sr. assassinated, so that put him on Junior's hit list. And Cheney had a lot to gain from invading Iraq because he had been vice president or CEO of Halliburton, and they were one of the primary contractors in Iraq that got all the business, all the money from our government, our tax dollars, to rebuild Iraq and fill the pockets of his buddies. And don't think that they didn't thank him in some monetary fashion, or perhaps he just benefited from the stocks he already owned in the company. Iraq was a racket. That's my opinion. Iraq was a racket. And Bush, W. Bush, I could smell that coming a year and a half out before he was elected. I remember being in New York City in a winter storm, and New York doesn't get a ton of winter storms with like significant snow that sticks. I can't remember if I was there for an arts conference or if I was even there to perform or I was visiting friends. I think it was an arts conference that time. And I was wandering around Lower Manhattan, probably around Soho area, if you know it. And at the time, cyber cafes were just the new thing. And so I was checking in on the internet. That was a big deal in 98 or whatever, 99, because the internet was still so new. And I was reading the news about Bush, and it was all hype and how he was going to be the next, conservative savior. Yet, of course, the left-wingers, us annoying liberals, we were saying that he was going to wreck everything and that he was a dumb bumbler and a cowboy. And guess what? He was a dumb bumbler and a cowboy because he invested us in a quagmire in Iraq to satisfy his revenge against Saddam for Saddam attempting supposedly to assassinate Bush Sr. And what did it cost this country? Was it $1 trillion, trillions of dollars to depose Saddam? Now, of course, when 9/11 happened, at first the country was unified for about 3 weeks over the idea of a response to 9/11. We knew we would respond to 9/11, and we probably were justified in going into Afghanistan when they refused to give up bin Laden. But we didn't get bin Laden, and then we stayed in Afghanistan, which is a whole other topic, and I can't go into that really today because I don't have enough information. When Biden recently withdrew the 2,500 troops, what I wondered was, how many troops have we lost in Iraq in the last 5 years? Was the presence of 2,500 troops in a peacetime situation in Afghanistan enough to stabilize their democracy? And if we hadn't lost any soldiers in the last 5 years, which I don't know whether that's true or not, would it have been better to stay and hold the peace and then hold it also strategically to keep the Russians and the Chinese from getting in there as they hope or plan to do? Of course, it's not going to go well for any of them because none of those parties can be trusted. The Taliban is rotten. China's government is rotten. Russia is a menace, a global menace. But who suffers? The Afghanistan people. Should they be expected to preserve their own democracy when we left? Maybe. Did they have the means to do it? I have no idea. No idea. But those are sidelines because, again, 9/11, did we learn anything as a country? Okay. Well, who were the hijackers? Were 17, 18, 19 out of the 20 hijackers Saudis? We didn't invade Saudi Arabia. We didn't invade Saudi Arabia because Saudi Arabia is one of our Middle Eastern allies. Or was at the time. They still are. But at the time, they were the autocracy that we tolerated because they were our buddies. And Iraq and Iran were not our buddies. But they're all autocracies. They're all ruled by dictatorship. Theological in the case of Iran, and formerly Iraq. And Iraq wasn't theological. That was secular. Saddam Hussein wasn't a religious nut. He was a secular dictator. But no, the Saudis didn't pay any price after 9/11. We didn't cut relations with them. We didn't blame them. We didn't cause any problems with them, even though the majority of the hijackers came from there, and bin Laden himself was Saudi. No. We invaded Afghanistan, which again, I think you can justify to get bin Laden. We didn't get him. We got him later. I think in Pakistan it was that they found him. But they used Bush, Cheney, David Addington, his attorney, Donald Rumsfeld, that smug asshole. They used 9/11 as the pretense or pretext, I don't know which word it is, pretense probably, to invade Iraq and finish unfinished business with Saddam. Now, of course, there's a lovely picture of Donald Rumsfeld shaking hands with Saddam Hussein 10 years before the invasion, when they were our buddies, when they were playing ball with us, giving us what we needed in terms of oil. But then when you're not our buddy, you're our enemy. And then remember Bush's speeches in Congress where he said, you either stand with us against the terrorists or you stand against us. Cowboy diplomacy at the end of a rifle, right? So what happens? We go into Iraq. It's a quagmire. And it's a quagmire because we don't understand Iraq. Because Iraq was under, let me get this right. Saddam Hussein was, if I'm not mistaken, a Sunni Muslim. But they were the minority in the country. And they were ruling the majority of Shiites. Or it's the other way around. Saddam was a Shiite. They were the minority ruling a majority of Sunnis. Well, Muslims, of course, but they can't figure out how to get along any better than any other two factions of a religion. I mean, why are the Protestants and Catholics, what is that all about? They believe in the same thing, but they battle it out over tiny little disagreements in religious doctrine, religious text, which is another reason why religions are stupid. Spirit is amazing, but man-made religions are stupid and divisive, because as soon as you codify it in a book, then you argue over the interpretations. Spirit's much more free than that, in my opinion. But again, I digress. So Cowboy Bush gets up in front of the country and says, you're either with us or against us. But he chooses Iraq as the target, a country that didn't attack us. Saudi Arabia is off the hook. And what happens? Tens of thousands of Iraqis die. Probably 10 or 20 times more people, Iraqis, who were killed in New York on 9/11. Iraqis who had nothing to do with the terrorist attack on the Twin Towers. Quagmire. Unnecessary suffering. And then all of the American military sacrifices in Iraq. All the soldiers killed or injured. And then they come home, and then the debate continues. Why are we in Iraq? What are we trying to achieve? Is it worth American soldiers' lives? Not to mention the tens of thousands of Iraqis, or perhaps hundreds of thousands of Iraqis who were killed. But we don't know the number because we didn't care about that number when we were killing them. Irrelevant. Not discussed. And the media was scared because the war drums were pounding. And much like the McCarthy era, W. Bush, drew a line in the sand between friends and enemies. And the press was appropriately frightened, as were the rest of us, including me. It was scary. His speech was scary because the energy of it was scary. It was dark. They didn't care really whose ass they had to kick, but somebody's ass was going to get kicked. That was Bush's attitude. And then what happens? Oh, then we torture Iraqi prisoners at Abu Ghraib. Then we also torture suspected terrorists who are in detention. We get into waterboarding, stress positions, sleep deprivation. We're putting basically on a rack, you know. People died. that didn't have to die. Iraqis died that didn't have to die, or were terrorized that didn't have to be terrorized. Not the people who attacked us. Then some of that sort of inhumane militarism gets exported back to our own country, because it always does. So it ends up in the prison system. So then there's more abuse of Americans on American soil. Anything you do abroad that you institutionalize, like disregarding human rights of foreign citizens whose countries you've invaded, once you've exported it, you always import it back to your own country, because you get so good at it that you just bring it back to your own shore. Well, interestingly, it took 20 years or so, but the Republicans, most of the Republicans, because I read a lot of right-wing media to try to understand the bigger picture of things, most Republicans eventually saw W. Bush as a failure, that he was just another puppet of the military-industrial complex, and that he had unnecessarily wasted American lives and money in Iraq on nation building, attempted nation building. Well, who did they turn to instead to rebel against Bush Jr., Mr. 45 president? So they go from one bad actor to the devil. They double down on worse. They endorse an autocrat. And so from 2016 to 2020, we almost saw the complete unraveling of American democracy brought to us by our friends on the right. So when I saw the 9/11 tributes this past weekend, which are obligatory to honor our dead, I thought, what did we learn from 9/11? And to my mind, the answer is nothing. Nothing was learned from 9/11. And it makes me mad, and it makes me sad. And now look at where the United States is. Basically, the left and the right of the United States consider each other a bigger threat to the future of the country than they do any external force. Now we can get into the reasons for that, but that's for another day. I don't have enough energy for that. Not tonight. This is about 9/11. I think that's most of what I want to say. I'm sorry it's a downer. I think what really troubles me is it's bigger than that, in that these stories, these tales of not learning that lead to new wars against people who maybe aren't even the right people to be at war with, like the Iraqis, are so familiar and so constant. We see it all over the globe now, of warring between parties that don't seem to have learned anything from the history of war. They don't seem to be any closer to peace than they ever were. Even though, on the whole, the world is more peaceful than it was several hundred years ago, because we've somehow still made a little bit of progress, but not enough. In World War II, the scale of death in World War II dwarfs so many of the global conflicts we see now, but yet it seems like the lessons about the futility of war, or the uselessness, or the pointless suffering that it causes, they don't really seem to be learned. There's always some new cowboy waiting in the wings to prove that he's the guy who knows how to win the unwinnable war. And it makes me tired. I'm tired of the narrative always being the same. And I'm tired of bodies of people not learning from history. They always say that history repeats itself. Well, it does. Because we just continually find new wars to fight for whatever reason. And often they're not even the right wars to fight. What's gained? The human cost, is it worth it? So 9/11, 2,000 people die in New York City. And then the pushback is maybe 100 or 200,000 people die in the Middle East at our hands as retribution. The wrong people. What for? So, I hope humanity can finally start to learn from its wars, but I don't know how realistic that is. So I have to leave it there. I'm sorry. I don't have more of an uplifting message with this one. But I guess it can't all be roses all the time. I'll try to come back with something more positive soon. And I wish you well. Take care.